So Gabe, we're going to have fun kind of going through this. And we've done a couple focus groups about the Community Innovation Challenge, but we're continuing to learn, like we said before. Really, this is supposed to be, about what you are passionate about. So what's the gap in the neighborhood that you're seeing? Whole suite of some amazing partners in place here. We have the Community Innovation Hub, we have Economic Developers Council of Ontario, the Rural Ontario Institute, which Gabe's from, Centennial College, and the United Church of Canada. So that's myself and Sally Ann as well. So there's a couple of us here. And we also have some knowledge partners being Tamarack Institute, as well as Ontario Trillium Foundation. So quite exciting about all the people who think that Community Innovation Challenge are important. I know, Gabe, did you want to say why you think this is so important? Because you've seen some cool stuff.
I have to get quicker at muting and unmuting my phone here as we're moving through this. Well, certainly community, development, community innovation is it's important. It's really where everything's at, and it has to do with community engagement. So this particular project and challenge for us, I think, is very exciting because you can enter into the process wherever you're at now, and use the tools and use the resources that are here to create what it is that's most important to your community as you define it. And so that's what I think is exciting about this challenge.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. It's so grassroots, and it's going to look really different everywhere. So what is it? That's the burning question, I guess. So it's basically this place to be together. So what we really see is sometimes anything is possible if you're actually working together. And yet lots of things seem impossible when you're working alone. And so this is all about, we are not alone, we can actually work together. So we're trying to create the space, and Whova is the platform that we're using for this, as well as Zoom rooms and some of these conversations. But it's really about bringing together people to make a better society. Some of the most recent studies, and this can be in the States too, it can be worldwide on this, but the studies in Canada is that 65% of the population is dissatisfied with the existing political and economic systems. 65%. So that means that change is really necessary. And so where does that start? Well, it really does start in the grassroots. Yes, we can ask our governments and we can ask some of the big institutions to do better. And how can we actually make a difference ourselves? So this is an opportunity to consider how to do that. And what we're hoping for is that as you go through this process, if you have this idea that you're willing to collaborate on, providing $2,000 and some seed funding just to get you started to see whether or not the idea even makes sense. And so there's really a process that we'd be walking through of getting you through doing like a design jam-esque thing to actually get this idea together with your partners. Yeah. Anything else, Gabe?
I really love the idea that it can be anywhere and start anywhere, and that nothing is too small and nothing is too big. But as we all know, starting with the engagement of everybody, with everybody at the party is really fantastic, because it means that you are the people. You are the people who know what needs to be done in your community and where the energy is coming from. And some of the examples that we've seen are really phenomenal. I know, Carla, you have shared some of those, and it's really fascinating to hear them. And I know at the Rural Ontario Institute, we're seeing the same things happen, where people are looking at their community, and it might be energy around food security, and they're looking at different options where they can bring local food into a community, or they're looking at attainable and accessible housing and what that might look like, or they're looking at literacy. So all these ideas are places where people can start.
Yeah, and no judgment on the size, right? Like, I love that. Like, the change is still the change, right? And like, big change isn't possible without starting somewhere. And so that's great.
Absolutely.
So why be involved? Well, I think you're already hearing from both of us why we think it's so important is positively impacting the community, making new connections, like even in Huva, being able to reach out directly to other people, getting feedback on your ideas, maybe finding new partners, learning skills. So we have an entire workshop series that we're going to be talking about of skill sets to support you, recording them all and making them available. It's not always going to be Gabe and I. In fact, all the partners are going to be contributing for one of the workshops, gaining new insights, sharing ideas. And like you said, Gabe, welcome to the party. Like it's supposed to be an invitation. It should be fun.
Yeah, it should be fun. And again, it's as you said, it's not just us. It's our networks as well. So building that network is important, and it is what makes it fun because it allows you to imagine much more than you might imagine just on your own.
Yeah, and I love how you just gave that example of the partners in place. Like we're actually living this out ourselves of like how we like one of our organizations trying to run the Community Innovation Challenge it wouldn't be as fun as all of us working together. So moving us into the eligibility is then like you actually, I put in 5, but it's actually 4 partners plus you. So like basically you have to have your partners in place. Sometimes that feels like maybe a lot, but I think that how many people would actually agree on like the same gap in your neighborhood or the same challenge that you want to work on? So it's actually just 4 of you that we're looking for. And what is an organization? An organization can be big or small. And in some contexts, like talk to us about it. It could be like an individual. It could be 4 individuals. So it is a conversation with the team of like, are you fully eligible on this? I mean, we want to say yes. I'd say like we're on your team for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So, so agree upon a challenge. We actually have a workshop to help figure that out. But you basically have to, and here's the thing, as we've seen, is that when you like look throughout Edmonton or Dovercourt or Kansas or wherever you are, you're basically going to like probably something's rising to the top of something that you really want to lean into, right? And so this is your first experiment of how do we partner together. Then the other part is that your partners and yourself, you really want to spend the time to know your community, right? You don't want to make assumptions. You want to ensure that lived experience, you want to make sure that people who are impacted by the gap, by the challenge that you're talking about are actually part of this design and co-creation with you. So don't do things in silos. That's really something that we're really hopeful of through this. We are making space, obviously, in Huva to get some of the first rounds of the design thinking stuff going and all these workshops. But we're actually hoping to run this all of next year as well. So I said May, but I mean, the sky's the limit. We really would love to see the momentum pick up on this. And unfortunately, Rick, you have to be based in Canada, but we'll figure things out. Anything else? We're good. Any questions on this? I mean, please feel free, or we can save them too. So we wanted to give some examples because like Gabe was saying, like this could be big or small, and anyone, I'm sure you all have examples. So our first Community Innovation Challenge that we ran was actually in the Windsor area, so close to Detroit. And basically there was 10 different problem areas that 70 organizations actually decided to think about, and they whittled it down to 6 different things they actually cared about. I know it doesn't have to be at the scale, don't worry. And then there was 5 ideas that were actually decided to move forward. And the one was a small place called Harrow. Their idea was to support and alleviate social isolation, to start creating community dinners. And Harrow is a very, very small rural town on like in southwestern Ontario. And so what they did is they go, we're going to have this like amazing community dinner. They sold out. They had 150 people at the first one. And about over half the people were actually newcomers to Canada. And about a third of the people in the room actually didn't speak English as a first language. But people all came, had this beautiful dinner together, brought their instruments. And at the end, and this is pre-COVID, all of these people were actually dancing and like just different ways of actually communicating with each other. And so in the county of Essex, they decided to continue having these roaming community dinners, so it was accessible for different people. And although they had only been given like $500, so not even the 2,000 we're offering for this, $500, they actually fundraised $800 in the first community dinner. So the thing was sustainable right away from the groups and the people who really wanted to make a difference there. Lumsden is in Saskatchewan, so that's kind of in the middle of Canada. And what they decided to do was, the biggest gap they had is people didn't know what was happening. There wasn't like one Facebook group. There wasn't like one place to know that this is what your kids could do. There wasn't a community board that everyone had access to. The municipality or the county wasn't actually having a board of, like, there was no place to find out how to access things. So they actually got a big whiteboard, put it in the center of town. That was one thing. And then they actually connected it with an online calendar of events that anyone could actually have access. And they just basically gave some of the key influencers within Lumsden access to add in all the events that were happening. So they could be more connected as a neighborhood. And guess what? That doesn't cost anything. They already could just do it. And then Parry Sound, they wanted to really support artists. And they thought that they had to spend all this money, but instead they actually gathered the artists of what they needed, right? So the lived experience, and the artists are like, we don't need your fancy curtains. We don't need this. What we need is storage units, lockers for our art supplies or our props, so that when we come here, we know that they're safe. So it's kind of interesting, like when you have the lived experience there, like what kind of like, what you're gonna co-create might look very different than what you thought it would be. Gabe, I know you have tons of examples as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have examples exactly the same way in small rural communities, because of course we're the Rural Ontario Institute. And many of our examples start with youth in the community, and youth that have ideas, but also youth that really just have a passion for engaging in their community and wanting to make a difference in their community. And so that's sort of where it starts from. It's that seed of really just wanting to understand where they can make a difference and how they can get involved and make a community that they want to live in. And so some of theirs, we have a program called the Rural Change Makers. And so within that program, the youth are learning rural community development. And part of that is engagement. So they bring individuals within the communities together and prioritize what the issues are for those communities. And so some of the things that have floated to the top, and much of this was actually done during the COVID when they couldn't get together. One thing they found was up in some of the northern communities was literacy was quite an issue for them. And they used literacy and books and education around reading and around storytelling as a way of bringing youth together in their community, so that was supported that loneliness that was happening with COVID when people couldn't get together. That was one of the things that happened. Another community, they found that their community was changing with a lot of influx of people. So some of the rural communities, of course, that are on the edges of cities are growing so incredibly fast. And they wanted to help the people that were coming in from more urban centers to understand the rural communities. And so what they did there was they created a community garden as part of that. And it was exactly the same thing, Carla, that you were sharing, in the Harrow community, that the storytelling that happened and the community that developed through this community garden was great. But you have to remember that's all part of deciding what are the tools that they need and who is the capacity within the community to make that happen. Another community, they were working on housing. So as we know, all across the province of Ontario, both attainable housing, affordable housing, access to living spaces is incredibly difficult. And so they worked on a webinar, a network that brought best case scenarios and included developers, and that included individual people with their stories about what they needed for housing across the whole spectrum in terms of different income levels and in terms of different family styles. So that was a really important project as well. There's been tons of other projects in each of these individual communities, everything from increasing fitness within the community, looking for mentors to help people with careers. And so all of these projects start again with engagement that defines what is it that makes our community healthy and how can we contribute as a first step to it and let it grow and figure out whether it can be sustainable.
And all of those start in such different places, right? Like I love all those, like the challenges or gaps or the things that they leaned into are so different and so contextualized. So yeah, you definitely don't want to like just grab someone else's idea and replicate it exactly. It won't work. Like that's not how it works.
No, absolutely. It has to be the story of the community and for the people of the community. And it doesn't mean, that you can't start with a passion. I mean, everyone starts with a passion. That's what even brought you here today, right? That's why you're listening and wanting to be part of a community innovation challenge. But just being open-minded to letting that passion grow in the directions where the energy takes it and how it evolves. It's exciting.
So all I'm hearing is like, again, this is for you. We hope so. So I also kind of hear probably just seeing some of the facial expressions going like, okay, so how do I decide that problem? Like, how do I gather the partners? Like, how do I get started? So in Whova and what you registered for, there's actually a list of all the workshops that we'll be running. Like I said, you will see Gabe and I again, but you're going to see other people as well. And really like, how do you run the design thinking part of this to co-create? Like we're going to have an entire workshop by an expert who runs hackathons, run that for us. So and like, how do you evaluate it? That's actually something that Tamarac's Institute, who's well known nationally for that, maybe internationally, is going to be supporting us on that. So there's going to be, it's not just the seed funding, it's the networking, it's the connections, and then like all these resources of how to do this community economic development work. I'm excited. I'm coming to all of them if I can, or watching afterwards. And then afterwards, of course, like there's a place on Whova in the second half. So starting October 15th, that when you run your design jam, you can actually post the idea that you co-created on the Whova platform. And it stays up there for up to 6 months with people continuing to connect with you and giving you ideas. So again, seed funding is like nothing compared to all the value and connections and partnerships getting through this.
Exactly right.
Sorry. So the big question, how to get started. We do actually have on the socialinnovationchallenge.ca a form to submit your expression of interest. You're already in the workshops, like you can keep on going through this process with us and learning, but you're also really invited if you already know what your gap is, if you already kind of have your partners in place, the expression of interest on socialinnovationchallenge.ca will walk you through really what we're looking for in order to be eligible for the $2,000 seed funding. So it's pretty straightforward. It's about 9 questions, and it's really about finding your collaborators, agreeing on the challenge that you want to co-create together. And then we're really happy to partner with you as well. Couldn't be, it's like the easiest grant you've ever written. So really here, this is the connection there. And at this point, I'm going to stop the recording and get us to be able to have more of a frank discussion for whatever kind of works for you.